I am, after 40 years, institutionalized, like a criminal who's been in prison or a patient sectioned to hospitals, and I don't think there's a chance I'll make a full escape. The Cambridge Dictionary defines being institutionalized as gradually losing the ability to think or act independently, having lived for a long time under the rules of an institution. And so I have lived, with regulated food times, bells that signal movement or change, a uniform to dictate what should be worn, and a set of behavioural standards to adhere to. For me, it's education at the heart of this, first as a student myself, and then in over 20 years as a teacher. And I'm not complaining, far from it. Teaching's the most inspiring and rewarding profession. Has a versatility and an energy about it that comes with the privilege of working with young people and seeing them develop. For me, education's about creativity and growth, exploration and risk. And yet, in educational institutions all over the world, there are set structures, timetabled boxes, curriculum requirements to be met, an examination syllabus to follow. And this means planning, carefully mapping out a sequence of learning experiences across a lesson, a week, a term, a year. And so I confess that this has permeated into my own life. Let's take the summer holidays as an example. For a teacher, that's 6 weeks that stretch out blissfully ahead. I return to the UK and reconnect with family and friends. Holidays equate to relaxation and leisure, an opportunity to break from the regulations of the institution. My reality is a carefully constructed, colour-coded calendar that maps out the holiday week by week, ensuring that we spend time with family and friends, maintain our own leisure interests, and have a range of experiences. And like I said, I'm institutionalized. But I think society is giving us these messages all the time that we must be in control. Plan. Look at the growth in life coaching. And I only have to walk into a bookstore to see shelves full of titles that are encouraging us to do just this. Worrying too much? Then read Stop Worrying and How to Start Living. Financial concerns? Then turn to Think and Grow Rich. If you're working too hard, then there's the 4-day week, Escape the 9 to 5. As an English teacher, I ask you to consider the prevalence of imperative verbs here. And when we read the blurbs of these books, we're given further instruction to act immediately. We will find the answers. And they suggest a degree of ease. But crucially, that if we take control, we will be able to stop, change or challenge whatever it is we wish to stop, change or challenge. And I subscribe, I do. There are great reads out there. One of the first that was ever recommended to me was Stephen Covey's The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And it was in reading this many years ago now that I first became aware of a now far more familiar concept. We have a circle of concern, a circle of influence, and beyond that, a circle of fear. Fear because we cannot control or influence it. I know that in this model, that it's outside of our comfort zones that personal development and learning happens. But I question how many of us truly have to step outside our comfort zones on a daily basis. And when society is giving us these messages that if we just take control, then we can find the happiness or success we crave, then why would we? Plus, life's too busy, too full on, too complex anyway. So I ask you to think of a time when you felt out of control? Have you embraced this as an opportunity? Or if we're honest, how many of us seek to rectify the situation, and quickly, because that's scary? My most major learning curve in this regard is probably in being a mother. At first, it was all pretty much under control. Stop taking birth control, take the folic acid, look after yourself during pregnancy, and when baby comes along, it will all be fine. Well, I'd read the books. And to be fair, they worked. I'm eternally grateful to the actress, Gwyneth Paltrow. She's not a personal friend, but she employed a nanny who wrote a book that was just that bit more relaxed than the other trend at the time, Gina Ford's The Contented Baby. That level of control was a step beyond me. This read allowed me to find a routine that suited us as a family, and I could feel back in control of this very new situation. Fast forward, and as a toddler, turned to new reads like Joe Frost's Super Nanny, through which the naughty step entered our house, and I had somewhere to turn for advice on the inevitable temper tantrums and sleep issues. So far, so good. But as we know and celebrate, babies and young toddlers continue to develop physically and to develop their own very independent personalities. The balance shifts. Control, influence. And then along comes school and friends and peers and technology and a whole host of other things, all of which seem to have even greater influence still. And gone is the feeling of being anywhere near like in control. And that's scary. And it's a scary world out there. So as parents, we can only hope we provide the support, love, encouragement for them to find their way through. Their way. It's not the path, perhaps, that we'd have considered, planned, or hoped for. It's almost certainly not the path that we would have taken. There will be many mistakes made along the way, but hopefully some remarkable highs as well for both them and us. And that's where I find myself today, standing, if you like, at the precipice with a 12-year-old, nearly 13, of whom I'm incredibly proud, but recognizing that a lot of it is now out of my control, probably has been for quite some time. So I'm learning that I can't be in control of it all. And that's really difficult to face up to when in this situation you want control because you want your children to be happy and successful. But I've also had to make the realization that my version of happiness and success, friendship, is not necessarily her version. And so, with some trepidation, I wait to see what's ahead. I anticipate both reward and surprise. One surprise, perhaps, that things will not fall apart completely. The world will not stop turning. Common misconceptions for control freaks amongst us. You'll remember my colour-coded calendar. So I'll share with you a trip we took last year to New Zealand as a family in embracing this new thinking. We were for the first time going to explore in a camper van. Naturally, I couldn't resist seeking the advice of friends and colleagues as to how to manage this, mostly without it ending in divorce. But I was determined not to plan with my usual military precision. So I found myself, mere hours after arrival, on a ferry in the sunshine with a bottle of wine and heading to an island about which I knew nothing. All of this having been spontaneously orchestrated by somebody that I didn't know that well and who wasn't coming with me. And I didn't know what to expect, and I did feel a little out of my comfort zone. What I found was an idyllic island with beautiful coastal walks, lovely eateries, and a chance to unwind and relax in a way that wouldn't have happened, I don't think, if we'd stayed in the city in which we landed and done what tourists do. And it set the tone for a holiday in which we drove, we wandered, we genuinely were more aimless than ever before. I have a whole trove of wonderful memories to treasure. More wonderful, perhaps, because they came as the journey unfolded. I hadn't set out with a plan. I didn't have those expectations that come through controlling the narrative, going everywhere, doing everything the guidebook said. This idea of controlling the narrative is so prevalent in society today, especially one in which social media reigns. If you are not controlled by its addictive force, then of course you are controlling the way other people see and perceive you through your pictures, posts and comments. Don't get me wrong, there is lots that's really great about social media, but I cite it as another example of where society is giving us this message that we must be in control and present this perfect image. And in a world where others are our judge and jury, that if we do not, then we are somehow failing, we don't measure up. We're busy people with multiple responsibilities, and juggling and managing all of this means we take control. But in learning that I don't have to feel like I'm in control all the time, I've relished recent days without a plan. Previously, I'd have worried I was wasting time. There were jobs that needed doing. There was something constructive that must come from a day. No, I didn't tick 4 things off my to-do list, but I saw an incredible sunset. I laughed out loud. Things that might not have happened otherwise. So I ask you to consider where you stand on this need for control. I do not stand here today suggesting that I have a set of answers, although there are brilliant TED Talks that provide us with a toolkit for moving forward in different directions in our own lives. No, I think I'm asking of you something like the opposite. That as a society, actually, we, ironically, take control of allowing ourselves not to feel we have to be in control all the time. We give ourselves permission to let go, to step back, to discover what's there to be discovered. And I'd like to think about this in our classrooms as well, back in the institution. Teaching has long been synonymous with this idea of control. When we are teacher training, we are asked to produce explicit lesson plans detailing things minute by minute. All over the world, monitoring and observation prevail. And we've already said schools must plan for progression, to have clear outcomes, to provide measurable learning. And that means that often teachers feel they must dictate what goes on in their classrooms. And to an extent, there's value in that, of course. But can we experiment a little? I share with you a unit I taught on Shakespeare, and we'd studied the text Twelfth Night. I wanted students to demonstrate an understanding of the plot and the key relationships between the different characters. When I first started teaching, I'd have been encouraged to set a single task for the class to complete in order to demonstrate this learning. I'd have differentiated for those more able and supported those who needed it. As my own practice has evolved, I've seen the benefits of and the increased engagement where students are given more autonomy, a collection of tasks to choose from. So I thought, what if I go a step further? What if I just give them the objective and leave them to it? And I had to step right back, not to influence or control. Far from procrastinating and producing anything of little worth, both were valid concerns considering the time of year and some of the characters involved. I was rewarded with a range of really high-quality responses. Comic strips, cartoon animations, written diary entries, and filmed monologues. Now, I know we can't always do this in our classrooms, but I really hope we can encourage a shift in pedagogical thinking to allow for greater student agency, to find those opportunities. This will evoke fear in many teachers. She's asking me to lose control of my classroom. But I think it also presents us with an opportunity for real professional and personal growth. So I'm taking baby steps in my own journey, learning that I don't have to be in control of everything all the time. I am still a control freak, and friends in the summer laughed when I told them the title of the TED Talk. You? Letting go completely? But I'm giving myself permission to do so. I do know that everything doesn't have to be planned. As a parent, I'm committed to trusting in the process of having instilled the messages and values that will allow my daughter to take her own path. And as a teacher, I'm committed to trusting more in the capacity of our young people in their own learning journey. I'll need reminding of this commitment. I will have to face the fear and discomfort that comes with it. But I will try to do so because I am determined to escape from being quite so institutionalized. Thank you.